Nintendo Switch 2 is off to a solid start, but it's already trailing behind the PS5 sale pace. And that's not nothing because when you're following up one of the best selling consoles of all time, expectations aren't good. They're supposed to be dominant. So is this just a slower launch cycle or is Nintendo facing a different kind of competition this generation? Because early momentum matters more than people think.
Are you not entertained?
Here's what makes this interesting. PS5 had supply issues early on. Pandemic launch, well documented, and still managed to be explosive long-term growth over time. Switch 2, on the other hand, entered a more stable hardware market compared to the PS5, but without the same driven hype wave. So the comparison isn't perfect, but it's revealing. Nintendo doesn't need to beat PlayStation in raw power. They never have. But Switch 2 isn't outpacing expectations early. Investors and fans are going to start asking, is this another phenomenon like the original Switch or just a strong sequel? All right, so like I said in the intro, listen, the PS5 launched in a very, very crazy point that no one was expecting. Scalpers was running rampant, and really anytime that the PS5 console became available to purchase, it would instantly sell out. We talking about that people were buying bots to try to get their hands on this motherfucking system because scalpers had already bought bots and was clearing out the fucking inventory. So you gotta really frame the situation these two consoles launched in. Switch 2, it was very more stable. Hey, things were very much on the shelf. You can go in the store and then buy these said products. So, that contents matter. I'm never gonna downplay that. And they have different value positioning. PS5 sells, quote unquote power, even though the Xbox is more powerful than the PlayStation. But Switch 2, very much a Nintendo IP nostalgia grab. It's portable, which the PS5 is not. So they have that whole portable ecosystem and customer base that the PlayStation 5 doesn't have. I mean, I know they've launched some things, some handheld type devices, but really the handheld space has been switched for a long time. Steam Deck came along and blah 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 blah. Long-term play is really what I want to emphasize. The PlayStation is, I think they already eclipsed 90 million consoles sold, I believe. And so Switch 2, I'm not saying needs to hit 90 million. When you compare it with the Switch 1 sales in the quick pace, the momentum of that pace that Switch 1 maintained for such a long period of time, it's kind of like, well, I don't know if Nintendo can do that again. And my cousin has funnily pointed out that Nintendo doesn't really have back-to-back success consoles. How he put it in one of our past videos. But this is not to say that the Switch 2 is dead, is dying. We just had the Nintendo Direct that I thought was a very strong and really one of the most strongest Direct I've seen out of Nintendo with the most amount of third-party support. Not saying that those third-party ports are going to be stable. That's something that we'll have to wait and see. When you compare the numbers in the pacing of Switch 1 to Switch 2, even when you compare it with the PS5, but I know they launched in different fucking eras of financial stability. It's kind of like the question is lingering, like, man, can Nintendo get lightning in the bottle back-to-back consoles? I don't know. I just think that the value of the Switch 2, the price, is just not, it's not where it's at for the people that are not Nintendo diehards. Because now when you go 6 months, a year after launch, the diehards are already bought the system. Now you're looking on the casual buyers. And for the casual buyer, I don't think Switch 2 pencils out. And I've said this on past videos. Why would you ever release a OLED Switch 1 and put an LCD screen in the Switch 2? That's not OLED. It doesn't make financial sense. And people have commented on our videos saying, hey, I bought a second Switch 1 OLED just in case something happens to my original because I'm not buying this Switch 2 at its current configuration. It doesn't make sense. But, it's an interesting topic that we'll surely follow because we follow all Nintendo topics. I'll let my cousin give his 2 cents about this topic now.
I'm gonna double down There's a few things my cousin pointed out. And the commenter who said that, hey, I'm right there with you, bro. I have a backup OLED just in case because, mwah. But typically, and Nintendo fans, I'm sorry that I'm not sorry. Nintendo does not have back-to-back successes with their home console, even though the Switch is not a console, it's a handheld. And I just want to add real quick, my cousin really needs to put like a asterisk mark on the word portable because this bad boy ain't really portable. It is huge. This ain't something you slide in your pocket and just keep on going. But
It's a Steam Deck
I
though.
find it, I mean, yeah, so is a Steam Deck, you know? That's why I call them handhelds, not portables, because they
Oh,
ain't
okay,
portable,
okay.
but
I got you. I got you.
yeah, it is. It's kind of daunting if you look at it without emotions. That the hardware that's 5 years old, that's been on the market, is outselling the new kid on the block, even when the new kid on the block is cheaper. And you can point out whatever excuse you would like. Oh, you know, PlayStation put it on the sale. Okay, the Switch 2 could have went on sale, which Nintendo will not do. They only put stuff on sale if they're losing, and in their eyes they're not losing. The hardcore diehards have shown up for the Switch 2, and that's great. You know, I know some people who enjoy it, and I'm like, you all are fucking crazy, because the reason there's no OLED in the Switch 2 is because they're going to sell it to you later on. They're going to do that. There will be revisions of the console, just like there was a Switch Lite and a Switch OLED. They'll probably do the same thing with the Switch 2. But as far as the numbers, you will think we are ragging or just Nintendo haters, which is not true. I've admitted I have multiple Switch Ones. I have hundreds of Switch One physical titles, and even more digitally. There's no one who's just hating on them here. The numbers speak. The Switch 2 is trailing behind the Switch One, and it's not selling off the shelves as you would think. Because I'm going to say this. This is me going back to being an old guy. When Switch 1 came out, it was kind of like the Wii. You could not find a Switch to save your life in like
Mhm.
that first year or two because they were just off the shelf, the same as the Wii. You can also go back and check and fact check me. I always welcome it. That the Breath of the Wild was selling more copies of the game than it was of systems on the market. There were people who bought the game to have it in their hand whenever they can get a chance to have a Switch on them. That's how popular it was. The Switch 2, you can walk into Best Buy, Target, Walmart, GameStop, you name it, and find a Switch 2. And naysayers will say, oh, Nintendo did that on purpose to combat the scalpers. Okay, you may have sold me that on launch day. Launch week, we are well past 6 months. And even though, oh, well, COVID, okay, even still, we're in the RAM-pocalypse. CPU, GPUs, RAM shortages, all that. You can still walk in and find a Switch 2. They are everywhere. People that wanted it bought it. And I commend Nintendo for the Switch 1. Had a heavy third-party support. I commend them on that because, baby, that's one of the reasons why the Wii U failed. It proved you cannot sustain a console with just first-party input. It's not happening. That ain't how that works. But my issue now with Nintendo and its third-party support, one of the niches or one of the aspects that made the Switch 1 so wonderful was not just the first party output from Nintendo, but you had older games that no one could have thought of be put on the Switch and people will buy it back because now it's portable and they can enjoy it on the go. And a lot of times it was probably something I'm not gonna say a lot. Sometimes it was at a cheaper price. Sometimes it wasn't. Fucking looking at you, Skyrim, because you was at full fucking price. The third party support has continued on Switch 2, but now they're getting current gen games day and date. Like Resident Evil is on the Switch, even though it's the key card thing, and that's a topic for another day. But my point I'm trying to go with is people are putting so much stock and faith into the Switch 2 that they're not like, oh, we'll put it on there later and make sure you can run this. They're just like, no, it'll just go day and date. Games on the Switch always had a compromise, whether it was in slight gameplay, interface, whatever it was, how it looked, how it ran. There was always a little caveat because it's on a smaller screen, it's on lesser hardware. And I mean, if you take away the PS5's price increase, the Switch 2 is just $50 less than a original MSRP PS5, but performs significantly less. this newfound greed or mind shift that Nintendo has. I don't see it playing out because that's just not what it is. There's no one buying a Switch 2 to play Fallout 4 on it or the Oblivion remastered. Now, I'll be full transparent. I thought that Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and the original Oblivion would get ported to the original Switch. Those games were old enough where you could port them and have little compromises possible. But Nintendo was like, hey, we're going for the big and the bold, and I'm curious how this will pan out. You can check, once again, fact check Infamous. You can fact check Square Enix and look at the sales of the Final Fantasy shit. I think it's remake. That's the first one. New one, yeah, people bought up the physical thing case of it because it had an exclusive Magic the Gathering pack in it. And I promise you, they did that on purpose. They did it to make sure to get them things off the shelf. But at the same time, I'll say this: Square Enix was smart. They put a port on that thing, and they were like, "Hey, put it at $40." If third parties do that with their older games, I can see this hanging on. But these older titles, lower resolution, lower spec, but you want full price for them, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Nintendo just does not historically have back-to-back success like that with their, unless it's the handheld. And you can go ahead and say, and me and my cousin, we've talked about this at length. The Switch is not a console. It is a handheld that Nintendo learned to give you the option to put on your TV if you want to. I want to end it off with this. Let's come back to this topic in a year. Let's come back to this topic next holiday. Switch is still abundant. See where the games are at and see if third parties are moving the needle. Let's see what they have in store for the next 3D Zelda, next 3D Mario, you know, in a sense, because that's what really hit, in my opinion, the original Switch. It came out of the door with a brand spanking new 3D Mario that people say is the best Mario ever created. They made Breath of the Wild, which everyone in their fucking mother just act like it's the second coming, you know, but which it's not.
All right, hey, I already said what I had to say. Let us know what you think, how you feel, and are you a happy purchaser of the Switch 2, or are you still on Switch 1 OLED or Switch 1 Lite, waiting for the value to meet the price tag that is the Switch 2? Let us know in the comments down below.
And that's it for this video of Are You Not Entertained podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell so you'll never miss our next hot take. Until next time, Are You Not Entertained?